Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us, a shocking revelation that changed everything. I never thought my life would come crashing down in a single night. But it did. The evening had started like any other. Me curled up on our velvet couch in the living room of the dream home my husband and I built together. The smell of fresh roses from our garden drifted in through the open window, mixing with the scent of the vanilla candle burning on the coffee table. Peaceful. Normal. Then I got the message. A text. From an unknown number. You should check the deed to your house. He sold it. For $1. I felt my stomach drop. My hands trembled as I read the message again. Sold? For $1? My husband, Grayson, was in New York for a supposed business trip. I knew better than to believe that lie. I had noticed the late-night phone calls, the lingering scent of expensive perfume that wasn't mine, and the sudden urgent meetings that always took him away from home. But this? Selling our house. A rush of adrenaline shot through me as I grabbed my laptop. If this was some kind of cruel joke, I needed proof. My fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, logging into our property records. There it was. My worst nightmare in black and white. Owner, Everly Cade. Transaction price, $1. I covered my mouth with my hand, my pulse pounding. Everly Cade. I knew that name. She was a socialite, a homewrecker, a woman who had been seen in all the wrong places with all the wrong men. And now she owned my house. I could barely breathe. Why would Grayson do this? How could he throw away everything we built, for her? But then something inside me shifted. The shock melted away, replaced by something darker. A cold, burning fury. Grayson thought he had won. That he had erased me from our life with a single stroke of a pen. But what he didn't know. I already knew everything. And I wasn't going to let him get away with it. The man I thought I knew. Grayson Westcott was not the man I married. Or maybe he had always been this way and I had been too blind to see it. On paper he was perfect. A wealthy, powerful real estate mogul with an impeccable reputation. He knew how to charm a room, how to make people trust him, how to play the loving husband when it suited him. But behind closed doors? He was ruthless. Calculated. And now a traitor. I stared at the screen, my heart still racing. Everly Cade. He had given everything we built together to her, for $1. I needed more information. I dug deeper, clicking through our shared financial records. My breath caught as I saw another transfer, $500,000 sent to Everly's personal account. This wasn't just an affair. He was setting up a new life with her. Rage curled in my stomach, but I forced myself to stay calm. I would not fall apart. If Grayson thought he could discard me like yesterday's trash, he had another thing coming. I picked up my phone, staring at the contact list. I needed to talk to someone who could help me destroy him. And I knew exactly who to call. A deal made in the dark. Grayson wasn't home when I walked into his office, but his secrets were. I had waited until midnight, when I knew the security cameras would be turned off for system maintenance. Grayson thought he was smart. He didn't realize that I had studied his habits for months. The room was immaculate, glass shelves, expensive leather chairs, a whiskey decanter on his desk. But what I was looking for wasn't on display. I moved straight to his safe. The passcode hadn't changed, my birthday. How poetic. The safe door clicked open, revealing bank statements, offshore accounts, and folders labeled confidential. My eyes widened. Grayson wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a criminal. He had been hiding money, committing fraud, laundering millions through fake real estate deals. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was illegal. And now I had proof. I smiled to myself as I took out my phone and snapped pictures of every single document. Grayson had sold me out. But what he didn't know, I was about to sell him out too. The moment I stepped out of Grayson's office, a wave of cold realization washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was war. Our marriage, our home, our entire life, he had thrown it all away for a woman who wouldn't even last. I clutched my phone tighter, the images of his fraudulent bank statements burned into my mind. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated escape plan. Grayson had been planning this for months, maybe even years. And the worst part? I had been blind to it. The man who once swore to protect me had signed away our dream for $1. He thought I'd disappear. That I'd crumble under the weight of betrayal. But he had forgotten one thing. I wasn't a woman who broke easily. The house, the one we designed together, the one where we made promises, shared whispered dreams, was now in Everly Cade's name. But Everly wasn't the problem. Grayson was. And I wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. With every step I took toward my car, my mind spun with possibilities. My heartbeat was steady now. No panic. No sadness. Just a calculated hunger to make him regret ever underestimating me. This wasn't just about getting even. This was about taking back what was mine. Dreams turned to nightmares in the blink of an eye. Grayson and I once stood in this very house talking about forever. I remembered how he held me in his arms, whispering about the future we'd build together. Was all of it. Now, my dream was someone else's reality. Everly Cade was in my house, sleeping in my bedroom, drinking wine on my balcony. And she thought she had won. I parked a few houses down the street, my fingers tightening on the steering wheel. The mansion was lit up in golden hues, a picture of perfect domestic bliss. The same home Grayson and I had built together was now his playground with his mistress. But they had no idea I was watching. I lowered my phone and sent a message. Unknown number, hope you're enjoying your new home. I hit send. And just like that, the lights inside flickered. A shadow moved past the window. They were inside. They saw it. Good. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. Grayson, what the hell do you want? I smirked. Me, to give you a reminder. Nothing you have belongs to you. Silence. I could feel the fear crawling under his skin. And that was just the beginning. I tucked my phone away and stepped out of the car. It was time to shake their little paradise. Home. A place of safety, comfort, and love. At least it should be. But for Grayson and Everly? Their home was about to become a nightmare. I walked up to the mansion's gate, every step slow, deliberate. The house was dead silent now, the tension inside almost tangible. I knew they were waiting for the next move. I lifted my hand and rang the doorbell. A few seconds passed. Then the door swung open. And there he was. Grayson. His face was tight, his jaw clenched. He looked like he had seen a ghost. I let my lips curl into a small, knowing smile. Miss me? He stepped out, shutting the door behind him as if to keep Everly hidden. What the hell are you doing here, Alina? I tilted my head. I should be asking you that. In my house. His eyes darkened. This isn't your house anymore. Oh, trust me. I folded my arms. It still is. More than you realize. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. You need to leave. I took a slow step forward. I'm not going anywhere, Grayson. Not until I get what's mine. His eyes flickered with something close to fear. Good. He opened his mouth, probably to throw another lie at me, but before he could speak, I leaned in, dropping my voice to a whisper. I know everything. And just like that, his entire world shifted. I saw it in his eyes, the split second of pure panic. I turned on my heel, walking away, leaving him standing there, trapped in his own fear. Because this was just the beginning. I could feel Grayson's eyes burning into my back as I walked away. His breathing was heavy, his mind spinning. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He also knew that if I had come this far, it meant I wasn't done yet. I reached my car, but I didn't get in. Instead, I leaned against it, taking my time. Letting him stew in his own fear. My phone buzzed. Grayson, what do you want, Alina? I smirked as I typed. We'll talk. So, be ready. I didn't wait for his response. I slid into the driver's seat and pulled away, leaving him standing there, stuck in the mess he created. But my mind was already moving ahead. This wasn't just about what Grayson had done to me. This was about what I was going to do to him. He thought he could sell off our life, everything we built together, to his mistress for $1? That he could wipe me away with a single transaction? He had no idea what was coming. And the best part? Neither did Everly. I watched them for the next few days. Grayson was unraveling. His texts had stopped. He had tried to call once, but I didn't answer. I let him sit in his own silence, waiting, dreading. Everly, on the other hand, was enjoying her new role as the lady of the house. She paraded around town, shopping in high-end boutiques, flashing the diamond necklace Grayson had once given me. She posted pictures of the house, of the lavish dinners, of the luxurious life she thought she had won. She didn't know that the walls around her were closing in. I had spent the last week digging deeper into Grayson's finances, his business deals, his offshore accounts. What I found? Enough to bury him. He wasn't just guilty of cheating. He was guilty of fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. Grayson had built his empire on a foundation of lies, and now? I was about to burn it all to the ground. But first, I needed to make Everly Cade realize exactly whose life she was living in. Everly Cade was exactly the kind of woman Grayson deserved. Young, greedy, beautiful in a way that made men lose their common sense. She wasn't special. She was just temporary. And soon she'd find out. I didn't need to sneak into my old home. I still had access to everything. The security system, the cameras, the alarm codes. Grayson had never thought to change them. Stupid man. It took me less than 5 minutes to get inside. The house was quiet, but I could hear the faint sound of music coming from the master bedroom. My bedroom. I moved through the halls like a ghost, my fingers grazing along the marble countertops, the velvet curtains. Everything was exactly the same. Except now it belonged to her. I reached the bedroom door and pushed it open, stepping inside. Everly was standing by the vanity, fixing her hair, a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't hear me. Not at first. Then she turned, and when her eyes met mine, the glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Her breath hitched. What the hell? I smiled. Slow. Unbothered. Oh, don't stop on my account. I just came to see how you're enjoying your new home. She blinked, her lips parting in shock. How did you get in here? I tilted my head. You'd be surprised what you still own, even when people think they've taken everything from you. Everly took a step back. Grayson said. I laughed. Grayson says a lot of things. You'll learn that soon enough. I took another step forward, watching as her hands trembled. Tell me, Everly, I murmured. Did it feel good? Stealing someone else's life? She swallowed hard. I didn't steal anything. I hummed. No? I looked around, my eyes scanning the room. Then explain why you're standing in my bedroom, drinking from my wine glass, wearing my husband's favorite scent? Her breath was shaky now. She was scared. Good. Because she had no idea just how much worse it was about to get. Everly wasn't just scared, she was unraveling. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, probably to call Grayson. Pathetic. She thought he could save her. I stepped forward before she could even unlock the screen. Go ahead, I said, my voice calm. Call him. Let's see if he answers. She hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the screen before slowly lowering. She knew. She knew something was wrong. Why are you here? She whispered. I smiled. To remind you that nothing in this house is yours. Not the bedroom. Not the wine. And definitely not Grayson. She let out a shaky breath. He loves me. I raised a brow. Oh, sweetheart. Grayson doesn't love. He owns. And right now you're just his latest possession. Her lip trembled. You're lying. I took a step closer, my eyes locking onto hers. Am I? Everly swallowed hard. The doubt was already creeping in. Good. Because she had no idea what was coming next. Grayson had thrown away our life for $1. A mansion worth millions, our marriage, our history, all reduced to a single dollar on a legal document. I had stared at that number over and over again, letting the insult settle deep in my bones. But what he didn't know, that $1 was about to cost him everything. I had already contacted my lawyer, already put the final pieces of my revenge into place. Everly thought she was winning. Grayson thought he had erased me. But I was 10 steps ahead. I pulled out my phone and sent a message. Meet me at the club tonight. We need to talk. A few seconds later, the response came in. Unknown number. Time to burn him to the ground? I smirked. Me exactly. Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about making sure he never got up again. That night, I sat in a dimly lit VIP booth, sipping my drink as the club pulsed around me. A few minutes later, my contact slid into the seat across from me. A tall man in a dark suit, his face sharp and unreadable. Everything's in place, he said, his voice barely audible over the music. I leaned forward. And the accounts? He smirked. FBI's been waiting for something like this. They're going to love what we found. My heart pounded, not with fear but with anticipation. What was happening? Grayson had no idea. He thought I was broken, defeated. But by morning his entire world would collapse. I finished my drink and stood, smoothing down my dress. Good. Let's get started. Because now, it was time to end him. Grayson always thought he was untouchable. He moved through life like a king, believing the world bent to his will, believing that women were interchangeable, disposable. That's why he never saw me coming. I had played my role perfectly. The loyal wife, the trusting partner, the woman too in love to notice the cracks forming beneath her feet. He never imagined I'd fight back. But I wasn't just fighting back. I was destroying him. I walked out of the club that night knowing that the final move was already in motion. The bank accounts were flagged, the FBI had the evidence they needed, and his empire, his entire life, was about to collapse. And the best part? He still had no idea. Morning came like a quiet storm. I sat in my car, parked outside his office, watching as Grayson stepped out in his tailored suit, his phone pressed to his ear. Clueless, unaware. He had no idea that by the time the sun set, his career, his fortune, and his reputation would be in ruins. I waited until he got into his car before I made my move. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one number that would change everything. It rang twice before a sharp voice answered. Ms. Westcott? I smiled. It's time. There was a pause. Then, we're on it. I hung up, my pulse steady. By noon, the world would know exactly who Grayson Westcott really was. A liar. A fraud. And soon, a ruined man. Grayson called me at exactly 12:37 p.m. The moment I saw his name flash across my screen, I knew. The storm had hit. I let it ring twice before answering. His voice was sharp, panicked. What did you do? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs. Good afternoon to you too, dear husband. Cut the crap, Alina. His breathing was heavy. The FBI. The IRS. They froze my accounts. My lawyers are telling me there's an open investigation. What the hell did you do? I smirked. I did what you never thought I could do, Grayson. I outplayed you. Silence. For the first time in his life, Grayson had no control. And he knew it. I could hear the tremor in his breath, the realization sinking in. You ruined me, he whispered. I tilted my head, savoring the moment. No, Grayson. You ruined yourself. And with that, I hung up. Because the real fun was just beginning. Ideas are dangerous things. And Grayson had no idea how much worse it was going to get. By the time evening rolled around, the news had spread. The headlines were brutal. Grayson Westcott under federal investigation, allegations of fraud and tax evasion. Real estate mogul Grayson Westcott's assets frozen, could face prison time. His business partners were distancing themselves. His stock was plummeting. And Everly? She was watching her dream life go up in flames. I got another call. This time it wasn't Grayson. It was her. I let it ring before picking up. Yes. Everly's voice was a shaky whisper. You set him up. I smiled. Oh, sweetheart. I didn't set him up. I just let the truth come out. Silence. Then her voice changed. He's going to come for you, Alina. I let out a soft chuckle. Let him try. Because Grayson had no idea what I still had left. And if he made one wrong move, I'd destroy him completely. By midnight, I was sitting on the balcony of my penthouse, sipping wine and watching the chaos unfold on the news. The reporters were ruthless. Westcott and Company in crisis. CEO accused of financial crimes. FBI raid Grayson Westcott's offices. What happens next? My phone vibrated. Another text. Unknown number. You really did it? I smirked. He told you I would. I had spent years watching Grayson get away with everything. The lies, the affairs, the betrayals. But now, he had lost it all. And I was just getting started. The city skyline was dark except for the red and blue flashing lights reflecting off the high-rise buildings. I stood on my balcony, sipping from my wine glass, the ice-cold liquid sliding down my throat as I watched the news unfold. Breaking: FBI raids the offices of real estate mogul Grayson Westcott in a federal investigation of financial fraud and money laundering. A smirk curled on my lips. He had no idea how deep this hole was. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. I glanced at the screen. Grayson. I let it ring, savoring the moment. Another buzz. Voicemail. I tapped the screen and held the phone to my ear. His voice came through raw with rage. Alina. Pick up the damn phone. What the hell have you done? Do you know what's happening? The FBI was in my office. They've seized my accounts, my fucking accounts, Alina. You need to fix this. Now. I let out a soft chuckle. Oh, Grayson. Still thinking I was the same woman who once cleaned up his messes. But I wasn't his wife anymore. I was his executioner. I put the phone down without responding and turned back to the city, letting the sounds of his downfall play as my own personal symphony. I always knew it would come to this. The lies. The betrayal. The downfall. Grayson had been playing a dangerous game for years, but he thought he was too smart, too powerful to ever lose. He thought he could cheat on me. Steal our dream. Sell our home to his mistress. For $1. As if that was the price of erasing me. But I had never been a woman who could be erased. And now, Grayson was learning that the hard way. A new headline flashed across the screen. Anonymous tip exposes hidden offshore accounts. Could lead to criminal charges. I swirl my wine in my glass, the deep red liquid almost poetic. He would never see freedom again. And Everly? She was about to pay her price too. Because Grayson wasn't the only one guilty. Everly Cade thought she had won. She thought she was the one Grayson would risk it all for. But she was just another pawn. And now, she was watching her fairy tale burn to the ground. I sat in my penthouse, my phone resting on my lap as I scrolled through her latest posts. She hadn't updated in days. No new pictures. No glamorous nights out. Because she was in hiding. Grayson's money was frozen. The luxury bags, the designer clothes, the private jets, all gone. And I wasn't done yet. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. A deep voice answered. "We're ready?" I smiled. "Do it?" Because while Grayson was drowning in his own disaster, Everly was about to learn a different kind of lesson. She thought she had taken my life. She was about to lose hers. The truth was a blade, and tonight I was holding it to Everly Cade's throat. She thought she had won. She thought she was special. That Grayson had chosen her, that she was the one woman who could replace me. She was wrong. I sat in my penthouse, swirling the last sip of wine in my glass as my phone vibrated. I already knew who it was. I let it ring, savoring the moment. Then I picked up. Her voice was a whisper, almost shaking. "Alina." "Everly." I leaned back against the couch, glancing at the headlines scrolling across my laptop screen. Her name was there now too. She probably already knew that. "You set him up," she breathed. I smiled. I just let the truth out. Grayson did the rest himself. She was silent for a moment. Then her voice hardened. "He's going to come for you. He won't let this go." I exhaled slowly, tapping my nails against the glass. "Oh, Everly," I murmured. "You still don't get it, do you?" She didn't answer. I let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. "He's not coming for me. He's coming for you." I heard her breath hitch. What?" I stood, walking to the window, watching the dark skyline glitter beneath me. "Did you really think he'd go down alone? That when the Fed started asking about those offshore accounts, he wouldn't mention the woman he gave $500,000 to?" She gasped. "He wouldn't?" "He already did." I smirked. "And guess what, sweetheart? You're on the list now." Her voice shook. "No. No, that's not." "You were fun for him, Everly," I said softly, "the same way you talk to a child about to be put to bed. A shiny toy. But when men like Grayson lose everything, they don't go down alone. And right now?" I tilted my head. "You're the easiest loose end to cut." I could hear her breathing turn ragged. "What do I do?" she whispered. I let the words hang between us. I wanted her to feel it. The same kind of helplessness she made me feel when I found out she had taken everything from me. Then I leaned in, letting my voice drop to a whisper. "You run, Everly." And I hung up. The moment I ended the call, I knew she'd do exactly what I wanted. Panic breeds mistakes. And Everly Cade? She was about to make a lot of them. I sat back down on my couch, watching my phone screen light up with missed calls. Grayson. Everly. Grayson again. They were scrambling. Their perfect little empire was collapsing, and they were running out of places to hide. I tapped my fingers against my thigh, thinking. I had already taken everything from Grayson. But Everly? I wasn't done with her yet. I picked up my phone again, dialing another number. It rang once before a familiar voice answered. "Ms. Westcott? How quickly can you pull a passport fraud report on Everly Cade?" The man on the other end chuckled. "She trying to run?" I smirked. "She will be soon." There was a pause. "I'll make sure she doesn't get far." I leaned back, satisfied. Everly thought she could just walk away from this. That if she ran fast enough, she could escape the fallout. But she was part of this story now. And I was making sure she stayed until the bitter end. I could feel the shift in the air. The desperation. The unraveling. Grayson had always been the one in control. The power player. The untouchable force in the business world. But now he was just another man on the verge of collapse. I watched from my penthouse as a black car pulled up outside his office. The FBI. They were moving faster than I expected, but I wasn't complaining. It was almost poetic. Grayson Westcott, the man who once thought he ruled this city, now a cornered animal with nowhere left to hide. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. This time he picked up on the first ring. "You set me up." His voice was wild, frenzied. I smiled. "I told you, Grayson. You did this to yourself." "I can fix this," he snapped. "I just need—" "You need a miracle," I finished for him. Silence. I could hear his breathing. Heavy. Desperate. And then, the words I had been waiting for. "What do you want?" I exhaled, tapping my nails against the glass of my wine glass. "You sold our dream, Grayson," I murmured. "For $1. He didn't answer. I let the silence stretch before finally delivering the final blow. "Now it's time for me to collect my price." Grayson Westcott was out of time. I could hear it in his breathing, the sharp, panicked exhale over the phone. The FBI was moving in, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't the one in control. "You want a deal, Alina?" His voice was low, almost pleading. "Name your price." I tilted my head, glancing out the window at the flashing lights below. "You don't have anything left to offer, Grayson?" His breath hitched. "That's not true." I smirked, swirling the wine in my glass. Men like him always thought they could bargain their way out. I let the silence stretch before I delivered the real truth. "You sold our house. Our life. For $1. You didn't even have the decency to fight me for it." I exhaled slowly. "So now I'm not giving you an out, Grayson. I'm giving you exactly what you gave me." Pause. "What does that mean?" I smiled. "It means I'm leaving you with nothing." A knock sounded at his office door. I could hear the hesitation in his breath. Then, "Mr. Westcott?" A voice on the other side. Firm. "Government issued. We need you to come with us." I closed my eyes, savoring it. "Goodbye, Grayson." And I hung up. And just like that, it was over. Grayson had spent his entire life building an empire, climbing to the top, convincing himself he was untouchable. Now he was being escorted out of his own office in handcuffs. The news coverage was relentless. Real estate mogul Grayson Westcott arrested. Federal charges confirmed. The fall of a titan. How one man lost it all in a matter of days. I sat on my couch watching it unfold in real time. A year ago I would have been devastated, heartbroken. But now, I felt nothing but satisfaction. Grayson was exactly where he belonged. And Everly? Her turn was next. There was one thing left to do. Everly Cade had disappeared. She was running just like I knew she would. But I had planned for that. I picked up my phone and dialed the private investigator I had hired weeks ago. "She's in Miami," he said the moment he answered. "She booked a last-minute flight. Checked into the Fontainebleau under a fake name." I smiled. Predictable. "Keep eyes on her," I instructed. "And make sure she knows she's being watched." Because Everly thought she was escaping. But the truth? She had nowhere left to hide. The thing about running? It only works if you have somewhere to go. And Everly Cade had nowhere. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my nails against the marble countertop of my penthouse kitchen. The Miami skyline stretched out in front of me, glittering and golden under the night sky. She was here. I knew it. She probably thought she was safe. That by hopping on a last-minute flight, using a fake name and checking into a 5-star hotel, she had outsmarted me. She hadn't. I took a slow sip of my wine as my phone buzzed on the counter. Private investigator. She just checked into the spa. Alone. I smiled. Perfect. I stood, grabbing my purse, my movements slow, controlled. Because tonight, I was going to end this. No security. No bodyguards. Just Everly Cade sitting alone in a candlelit spa lounge, a silk robe draped over her shoulders, her legs crossed as she scrolled through her phone. She had no idea I was standing just a few feet away. Watching. Waiting. I approached slowly, taking my time. The plush carpet muffled my footsteps, making sure she didn't realize I was there until I was right behind her. Then I leaned in. "Funny," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you'd be halfway to South America by now." Everly froze. Her phone slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the glass table in front of her. Slowly, as if she were afraid to turn around, she looked up. Her breath hitched the moment she saw me. "Alina." Her voice was barely audible. I smiled, sliding into the chair across from her. "You look tense. Not enjoying your vacation?" She swallowed hard. "How did you find me?" I tilted my head. "Everly, sweetheart. Did you really think I wouldn't?" Her breathing was uneven now. Her fingers clenched into the silk robe. "Grayson is gone?" I interrupted, my tone sharp. "And now, it's just you and me." A flicker of something crossed her face. Fear. Or the realization that she was officially out of moves. Either way, I enjoyed watching it. There was no way out for her now. Everly was trapped. And the best part? She knew it. She exhaled shakily, forcing a nervous smile. "Look, Alina. Whatever you think I did." I laughed low and soft. "Oh, don't do that. Don't play dumb. Not with me." Her smile faltered. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table, my eyes locked onto hers. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you walked into my life. When you slept with my husband. When you played house in my home." Everly flinched. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," I corrected. "And now, you're paying the price." Her eyes darted around the room, searching. For what? Security? An escape? There wasn't one. I sat back, my gaze unwavering. "Tell me, Everly, did you really think Grayson was going to take you with him?" She didn't answer. But she didn't have to. Because I already knew. She thought she had won. She thought she had taken my life. She thought she was safe. But now, she was learning the hard way. There was no way out. Everly Cade was cornered. I could see it in her eyes, the way they darted toward the exits, the slight tremble in her fingers as she gripped the edge of her silk robe. She wasn't used to being the one without control. She was always the seductress, the manipulator, the one who played the game. But this time, she was losing. She swallowed hard, her voice uneven. "Alina, I never meant to." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Don't." I tilted my head, studying her. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted my life. You wanted my house, my husband, my name." "I didn't want your name," she snapped, and for the first time, the desperation cracked into something sharp. "I wanted him." There it was. I smiled, slow and knowing. "And look where that got you." Her face paled. She knew. She had gambled her entire future on a man who had just thrown her to the wolves. And now, there was no going back. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Grayson, I raised a brow. "He what? Promised you the world? Told you he'd leave me? That he'd build a life with you?" I chuckled, leaning back. "Tell me, Everly, how's that working out for you?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. Because what could she say? She had lost. And the best part? I wasn't even done with her yet. For months, Everly had lived in a fantasy. A beautiful lie wrapped in wealth and deception. But now, that fantasy was crumbling around her. She took a shaky breath. "What do you want?" I lifted my glass, taking a slow sip. "I want you to understand something, Everly." I set the glass down with a soft clink. "You thought you were replacing me. That you could just slide into my life and erase me. But there's one thing you didn't consider." Her jaw tensed. "And what's that?" I smiled. "I don't lose." Silence. She swallowed hard. "Is this revenge?" I tilted my head. "Oh no, sweetheart." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Revenge would be ruining your credit, getting you blacklisted from every high society event, making sure every man you try to seduce knows you're nothing more than a homewrecker who couldn't even keep a man who was already cheating." Her breath hitched. I smiled. "That's revenge." I paused. "What I'm doing?" I let the words sink in. "This is justice." She exhaled, shaking her head. "Alina, please." I stood, smoothing down my dress. "Enjoy your stay in Miami, Everly. While it lasts." Her brows furrowed. "What does that mean?" I turned to leave, throwing one last glance over my shoulder. "You'll see soon enough." The moment I stepped outside, I pulled out my phone and made one last call. "Is everything ready?" "Yes," the man on the other end replied. "She won't be able to leave the country. Fake passport is flagged. Her bank accounts? Frozen. She won't even be able to book a flight out of Miami without setting off alarms? I smirked. Perfect. Everly Cade had nowhere to run. No money. No protection. And Grayson? He wasn't coming for her. I slid into the back seat of my car, crossing my legs as the driver pulled away from the hotel. I took one last look at the building, knowing that inside, Everly was realizing just how alone she truly was. She had wanted him. She had stolen for him. And now, she was paying for him. But I wasn't done yet. Because there was one last thing left to take. The last piece of Grayson's world. And I was going to burn it to the ground. The world had already taken almost everything from Grayson. His money? Frozen. His reputation? Destroyed. His freedom? Hanging by a thread. But there was one last thing left. And I was about to take it. I sat in the back of my car, fingers tapping against my knee, my mind already 2 steps ahead. The Miami streets blurred past, glowing under the neon haze of nightlife, but I wasn't thinking about Everly anymore. She was done. Trapped. Broken. Irrelevant. No, my focus was on the only thing Grayson had left to lose. His legacy. His entire empire. The company he had built brick by brick. The only thing he truly cared about. And by the time I was finished, it wouldn't be his anymore. I pulled out my phone and dialed. A familiar voice answered. "You're sure about this?" I smirked. "Do it." The line went dead. And just like that, the final nail was in Grayson Westcott's coffin. She thought she was safe. Everly Cade had spent her whole life using men, twisting their desires into weapons, playing the role of the perfect seductress. But she had never met a woman like me. I had played the long game. I had let her think she had won. I had watched her enjoy the house I built, sleep in the bed I once shared, live in my world. And then, I took it all away. Her bank accounts? Gone. Her fake passport? Flagged. The high-powered men who once worshipped her? Now whispering about her downfall. She thought she was untouchable. But now, she was nothing. And the best part? She knew it. I knew this moment would come. The moment Grayson would realize he had truly lost everything. The moment he'd have to face the consequences. And tonight, that moment had arrived. I stepped out of my car, the Miami air thick with humidity, the soft crash of waves in the distance. In front of me stood Westcott and Company. Headquarters. Or at least what was left of it. The lights were still on inside. I could see them, his former investors, his old business partners, the very people who once bent over backwards for him, standing in groups, whispering, waiting. Because the news had just broken. Grayson Westcott had officially lost control of his company. And the new majority shareholder? Me. I walked through the glass doors, my heels clicking against the marble floor, my presence alone turning heads. Then the double doors at the end of the hallway burst open. Grayson stormed toward me, his tie loosened, his face red with rage, his once carefully curated image now just a wreck of desperation. "You," he spat, his voice low and sharp. I raised a brow, unfazed. "Me?" His hands curled into fists. "This is impossible." I smiled. "Oh, Grayson, haven't you learned by now? Nothing is impossible for me." His jaw clenched. "How the hell did you do it?" I took a slow, deliberate step closer. "Did you really think I'd just let you walk away? That you could sell our house, our life, to some two-bit socialite and walk away unscathed?" I let my gaze flicker over him, drinking in the sight of his downfall. "Did you really think I wouldn't fight back?" His breath was heavy, ragged. "I built this company. And I took it," I said, my voice light. "The same way you tried to take everything from me." His face twisted. For the first time in his life he had nothing left to say. Because he knew it was over. I tilted my head, my smile slow and sharp. "Congratulations, Grayson." I leaned in, letting my voice drop to a whisper. "You're finally free." Then I turned on my heel and walked away. And I never looked back. The moment I stepped out of Westcott and Company for the last time, I felt it. The finality. The years of manipulation, the lies, the betrayals, all of it ended tonight. I had walked into that building as the woman Grayson had underestimated. The wife he tried to erase. But I walked out as the woman who owned everything he once had. I stood at the curb, watching as people inside the glass building whispered to one another, processing the reality of what had just happened. Grayson Westcott was done. He had lost his company, his fortune, his reputation, and now, he had lost me too. A sleek black car pulled up in front of me. I exhaled slowly, letting the Miami air settle in my lungs before opening the door and sliding into the back seat. As the car pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back. Grayson wasn't worth a second glance. He was just another man who thought he could play me and win. And tonight, I had proven him wrong. The thing about revenge? It had to be perfect. Not just an explosion of rage. Not just a single moment of satisfaction. No, it had to be slow, precise, a masterpiece of patience and planning. And mine had been exactly that. I had let Grayson think he was winning. I had let Everly believe she had taken my life. And then, I ripped it all away, piece by piece. Now, Grayson was facing years of legal battles, government investigations, and financial ruin. Everly? She was running from ghosts that would never stop chasing her. And me? I was finally free. I took a deep breath, letting the satisfaction settle in my chest. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice, and it had been perfect. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about taking back what was stolen. Grayson had taken my love and twisted it into betrayal. Everly had taken my home and turned it into a playground for her deception. But in the end, I took everything from them. And now, I was finally done. I leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes as the car sped down the road. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. I had played the long game. I had taken every hit, every scar, every moment of heartbreak, and I had turned it into my weapon. And now, I had won. The world outside blurred past as I sat in the back seat of my car, my fingers running absently along the cool leather. The Miami skyline shimmered in the distance, neon lights flickering against the dark sky. It was over. Grayson Westcott, the man who once controlled everything, was finished. Everly Cade, the woman who thought she could take my life and wear it like a designer dress, was a ghost. And me? I was finally free. But the strangest part? I didn't feel empty. I thought revenge would leave me hollow. I thought taking everything from them would make me just as cruel as they were. But instead I felt alive. I had been living in Grayson's shadow for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to breathe without him. Now I had my life back. Not the one I lost. Something better. I exhaled, pulling out my phone. A single message sat on the screen waiting for me. Unknown number, it's done. No way back for them now. I smiled, tucking the phone away. Because this time I was never looking back. A year ago I was the woman who had everything. Or at least that's what I thought. The devoted wife. The dream home. The picture-perfect life. And then in a single moment, it was all gone. I could still remember how it felt to find out. The betrayal. The rage. The slow, suffocating heartbreak. But now, I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the one sitting at home waiting for Grayson to come back. I wasn't the one pretending not to see the lipstick on his collar, the perfume that wasn't mine, the late-night meetings that were never about business. No, I was the woman who took everything back. And I did it my way. I glanced down at my phone as another text came in. This time it was from my lawyer. New business acquisition completed. Final transfer documents signed. I let out a soft breath, my lips curling into a slow, satisfied smile. Because now, I wasn't just free. I was powerful. And that was something no one could ever take from me again. Silence. It was the first thing I noticed when I woke up the next morning. No more phone calls from Grayson, begging to fix what was already broken. No more whispers about Everly flaunting her stolen life like a trophy. Just peace. I stood on my balcony, the crisp morning air brushing against my skin, the city stretching wide and endless in front of me. I had spent so long fighting, planning, calculating my next move. And now, there was nothing left to fight for. Because I had already won. I picked up my coffee, taking a slow sip, my mind drifting to everything that had happened in the past few weeks. How Grayson never saw it coming. How Everly crumbled the moment she realized she was on her own. How justice had finally been served. And the best part? I never had to lift a single finger. No dramatic confrontations. No desperate pleas for revenge. Just one signature, one plan, one perfectly executed downfall. And now, I was finally at peace. Because sometimes the best revenge is silence. One decision. That's all it took to change everything. I had spent months, years being the perfect wife. Supporting Grayson, smiling for the cameras, playing my role. And what did that get me? Betrayal. Humiliation. But I had made one decision that changed the game. I decided to stop being the woman who waited for justice. I became the woman who delivered it. Now the world was talking about Grayson Westcott's downfall. The financial scandal. The fraud. The affair. I had given him the chance to leave with dignity, to walk away before I burned it all down. But instead he tried to erase me like I was just another obstacle in his path. And that was his last mistake. I scrolled through my phone reading the latest headlines. Former CEO Grayson Westcott indicted on federal charges. Socialite Everly Cade under investigation for fraudulent transactions. I smiled, setting my phone down. One decision. One choice. That's all it took to bring them both down. And now, I was finally free. $1. That's what he sold our dream for. The mansion we built together. The home we decorated with plans of a future. The place I thought we'd grow old in. And he threw it all away for a woman who wasn't even worth that. I stared at the copy of the deed in my hands, running my fingers over the words. Property sold to Everly Cade. Transaction, $1. I should have felt angry. I should have felt the same rage that had fueled me all this time. But now, all I felt was pity. Because Grayson was the real fool. He thought giving Everly the house was his final victory. That he was wiping me away with a single stroke of a pen. But what he didn't realize, I was never attached to the house. The house wasn't the dream. The house wasn't my life. And now, I was moving on. With more money, more power, and more freedom than he'd ever have again. All for the price of $1. There's always a cost. Grayson thought he could cheat, steal, and manipulate without consequences. Everly thought she could take what wasn't hers and walk away unscathed. But every action comes with a price. And for them, the price was everything. Grayson was going to prison. His accounts were frozen, his assets seized. The empire he spent years building? Gone. Everly was stuck in a web of investigations, a criminal record looming over her, the luxury life she clung to slipping through her fingers like sand. And me? I was untouchable. Because I had played the long game. I had waited, plotted, planned. And in the end, they paid the cost. Not me. Never me. I poured myself a glass of champagne, stepping onto my balcony, letting the warm night air brush against my skin. They thought I was broken. They thought I would fade. But I wasn't the victim. I was the executioner. And they were nothing but ghosts of a life I no longer lived. A fresh start. That's what I had now. No more late-night battles with my own doubts. No more wondering if I had done enough, if I had fought hard enough. I had won. And the future? It was mine to create. I had spent years being defined by him. By the way I looked on his arm, by the way people whispered about my marriage, by the illusion of perfection I was forced to uphold. But now, I was just me. I wasn't someone's wife. I wasn't someone's problem. I was powerful, free, reborn. And for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Grayson always thought he was a king. He ruled with money, power, manipulation. He thought that because he had control over people, he was invincible. But what he forgot, a king is only as strong as the pieces on his board. And one by one I had removed them all. His allies? Gone. His company? Mine. His money? Frozen. His reputation? Shattered. And now, the king had fallen. I had checkmated him in a game he didn't even know I was playing. And that was the most satisfying victory of all. His voice was weaker when he called me this time. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the best of me. Alina, he breathed. Please. You have to fix this. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around the phone. Fix what, Grayson? Your lies? Your downfall? I let out a soft laugh. That's not my job anymore. You don't understand, he whispered. They're coming for me. I leaned back against my chair, closing my eyes. They were always coming for you, Grayson. I just made sure they had a map. Silence. I could hear his breathing. Uneven. Afraid. And for the first time, I felt nothing. Because he wasn't my problem anymore. He never would be again. A crown isn't given. It's taken. And tonight, I had taken everything. Grayson's power, his wealth, his name, it had all crumbled beneath him. But I had risen. I stood at the edge of my new estate, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon. My home, my empire, my life. I had built this, not him. And now, I was finally wearing the crown he had always thought belonged to him. Some people say revenge is fleeting, that it fades, that once you have it, it loses its meaning. But this was forever. Grayson Westcott would never rise again. Everly Cade would never steal again. And me? I would never be the woman I once was. I had fought. I had won. And now, I was finally free. I raised my glass to the stars, a soft smile playing on my lips. To new beginnings. To power. To justice. I had started as the wife who lost everything. But now, I was the woman who took it all back. And that was the perfect ending. If you loved this story, the betrayal, the revenge, the ultimate downfall, then don't just scroll away. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another high-stakes, edge-of-your-seat thriller. Like if you enjoyed watching karma work its magic. Comment below. Tell me, do you think Alina was right in destroying Grayson and Everly? Or did she take it too far? Let's talk. Whose side are you on? The end.